feel like I should wash my hands if the pizza gets around. You guys can start.
Or we could make a siyum next Motzei Shabbos, like a mensch.
I'm cool with that too.
And personally, for me it would be better next Motzei Shabbos. I'll tell you why. Rushing to give another share, the second share that night, to get it in, I'm leaving the next morning. A lot of shiurim make this siyum. You don't have to. You leave. What you do is you leave 2 lines out. You leave 2 lines, and then those 2 lines you do on Motzei Shabbos.
That's fine.
You think it's better? It's more like, and that way we could also plan it better. You can invite a lot of people. No, I mean not a lot. I'm saying, but you can have like. Oh, it's on? Okay, fine. Good vach, Shavua Tov. We're in the middle of a sugya. If you're allowed to use trees, right? You're not allowed to be mishtamish be'ilam, but you're allowed to be mishtamish. The Gemara said bitstadim, on the sides of the trees, which means things that are attached to the trees. The Gemara says now, 5 lines from the bottom on Kufnun Dalet on the base, 154b. 5 lines from the bottom. Let's say there's a machlekes tanai. What's the machlekes? It says ein oinu lo b'yomtiv. You're not allowed to go into a sukkah that is being held up by 2 walls, which are being held up by man-made things, and 1 wall being held up by a tree. So you're not allowed to go in there on Yom Tiv, and why? Because you're using the tree. Rabbi Shimon Elazar and Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Meir, oilun lo b'Yom Tiv. He says you could go up. Now, why would anybody say you could go up? You could go into such a sukkah. That sukkah is now being mishtamish, utilizing the tree. On Yom Tov, you're not allowed to utilize a tree, right? You're not allowed to use a tree. So the Gemara says, "My lab b'hakam mutar." Let us say, says the Gemara, that is the machlekes. One says you're allowed to use tzadeh ha'ilan, and one says no, tzadeh ha'ilan is like the ilan. Amar Abaye loy, the kuli amot tzadeh asurin v'hocha b'tzidei tzadeh kol miftagi. Mar sava tzidei tzadeh asurin, umar sava tzidei tzadeh mutarin. Everybody holds that it's a problem, but here it's tzidei tzadeh, which means not just something that comes off the tree, which is not the tree itself. That for sure is a problem. But something that's attached to that thing, it's like 2 steps off the tree. That is the machlekes. And what we're speaking about over here is that, look, you have these holes that we said last time in the tree. You put the boards into those holes. That's the tzadeh ha'ilan. On top of that, you put the schach. Now you use the sukkah. What are you using? You're gaining the schach. The schach is the tzidei of the tzadim of the tree.
What's tzadim branches?
Tzadim literally means the side, which means the offshoots. They're not the actual. So how many steps are you removed from the actual 2 here? Because what you're really benefiting from, what you're utilizing, is the schach. The schach is 2 steps off of the tree. So therefore, that is the machlekes. Do you view tzidei tzadim as tzadim? Meaning you say there's no difference. 1 step off. If 1 step off is a problem, then 8 steps off are a problem. And the other one says no. There's a difference. 1 step off is a problem. 2 steps off, they weren't geyser. They didn't make such a gzeira. Rava Omar, Manda Osa B'Tzdodin, Osanami B'Tzidei Tzdodin. Rava says, no. There's no such a thing. If you have a problem with sides, you have a problem with the offshoots, you have a problem with Tzidei Tzdodin as well. Oh, so then what's the terrace? What's the machlekes about? It won't help you to say that it's 2 steps off, because then you're going to have to explain the Manda Omar that said that it's okay. If 1 step off is not okay, then, and that's why he says 2 steps off is also not okay, because it's all the same thing, and everybody holds like that. So why would anybody say it's okay? And he says, "Man shari b'tzidei tzadim, shari nami b'tzadim." Whoever allows 2 steps off would allow 1 step off. So what's the machlekes about? The machlekes is about exactly that. That the machlekes is 1 doesn't hold of tzadim at all, and 1 holds of tzadim. Forget the numbers, how many off. 1 holds that the tree itself is the problem, and anything removed from the tree, any next step is already, or 1,000,000 steps, or even 1 step is not a problem, which is what the Gemara wanted to say at the beginning, the lemet katanoi. It's a machlokes here, whether we have a problem with the side, with the offshoots, with the I'm trying to get a better word for it. What are they called? Tzidade? Tahilan?
They call it here size of the sides.
Yeah, shvach. So, sides of the sides. Side of the tree, yeah. It's the side of the tree because it's not the tree itself. And the other one has no issue. The one that has no issue, and one has an issue, and therefore it's tzidate. It's also a problem. At the end of the day, you're using the tree. That's what Rava wants to go back to the original. So the Gemara asks a beautiful kasha now. Eisvei, you're telling me that there's no difference between tzidate tzadim and tzadim. Means if you like tzadim, then you like it all the way. If you don't like tzadim, you don't like it tzidate tzadim. You can't start making the line, the demarcation right there between tzadim and tzidate tzadim. Really? Says the Gemara, Eisvei Rabbi Moshe Medresh, Noat Yoseid Be'ilon, if someone wedged in like a bolt into a tree, like a long peg, V'tolabal kakolo, and he hung up a basket with food. Higher than 10 tvachim, ein eruv eruv. His eruv is not an eruv. What are we speaking about? A person wants to travel, for example, to somebody, his grandmother, in a different city, and it's more than 2,000 amos away. We know you're not allowed to walk more than 2,000 amot on Shabbat. That's the tchum. But if you create, and we're about to go into that, B'ezrat Hashem and Erevin, a lot of that, any program, an area which becomes your makom shvita. This is my resting spot. This is my spot. How do you make it your spot? You put food, that spot has access to food. That's the main key word here. If you have access to food in that spot, so the simplest way to have access to food is put food down there. And that becomes your makom shvita. So now you have 2,000 amot from that spot. If you had food there at the onset of Shabbat, you're good. This guy, he decided to make his makom shvita in the Reshut HaRabim. Because that was the point where he wanted to make a shvita so he could walk to wherever he wanted to go on Shabbat. Problem is that in Reshut HaRabim you're not allowed to carry hotza'ah. Now, so the basket, a normal basket, is 4 tfachim wide. Okay? 4 tfachim wide. In a Reshut HaRabim, higher than 10 tfachim, the Reshut HaRabim only extends to 10 tfachim. Higher than that is like a review on Shabbat. If it's 4 tfachim, then it's real Reshut. And since it's enclosed, and it's higher than 10 tfachim, you say good achis, it goes all the way down, the basket on top. And now you have a Reshut HaYachid over there, so there's no access to the food. Because if you go there, how could you eat your food? The way that the food works is that since you have access to food, so this could be your place. Because you have food. But if you can't access the food, because there would be a problem of carrying from the basket to your mouth, because you're in the Reshut HaRabim, and the food's in the basket in Reshut HaYachid, so therefore, it's not an eruv. That's what it said, if it's higher than 10. Lower than 10 tfachim, eruv eruv. The mata miyut tfachim, eruv eruv. Why? Because it's in Reshut HaRabim. Right? If the basket is in Reshut HaRabim, and he's in Reshut HaRabim, so you're not carrying.
So 4x4 doesn't create its own, 4x4 to create its own. But 4x4 in Reshut HaRabim is still considered Reshut HaRabim.
Right. Exactly. So therefore, the Gemara says, Tosis asks you kasha, Amnon. It's bothering me a little bit. And I was like, there's something's niggling at me, something's wrong here. It's a caramelist. It's a caramelist. Because it's a roch v'rabah, so it's midrabanan, you're not allowed to carry from a caramelist to a Reshut HaRabim. It's really its own reshus, so it should be like a makam patur, midoraita, should be not a problem. But midrabanan, it's a problem. So you have no access to the food. At the end of the day, Derabanan, you have no access. Look at the top toises. Kosher. Amay eruv. Ve'okarmelitu. Kivan sheroch v'abo ve'osu l'taltel l'shut harabim. Kach hikshe Rabbeinu Amnon. V'yesh lomar en karmelit bekelim. K'depirish v'kuntzit per karmelit b'chilt. K'abi hoytzik k'posim v'nachas. Yinam k'rabi do amar kol. Tov shu mishum shvus l'gozo lo ben hashmoshes. First teretz is that there's no karmelis in kalim. You can't make a rishus of karmelis with kalim. He refers us to a Rashi on Daf Ches. We have to go look at it. We don't have time right now. Or the second teretz is that When do you want to create a makom shvita? At the onset, ben hashmashot. So the Chacham were in Geyser things on ben hashmashot. So at ben hashmashot, it was good. So therefore, it's good for good. It's good for the whole time. So now, okay, it's a Givaldige Kasha. There's a lot to talk over here. It's not like, this is an excellent point. But anyways, let's go right there. What's the Gemara's point? Okay, I have a beautiful halach here. Says the Gemara, time of the noatz, yased be'ilon. Haloi noatz, afil lamata yud mitfochem enuruv erev. The Gemara is being medayek, is being particular about the word noatz. What do you mean you wedged a bolt? Is that the only way to get food on the tree? Just tie the basket to the tree. Such an interesting lashon. You wedged a bolt into the tree and you hung a basket from it. It sounds very particular. You use that lashon. It sounds like if you didn't do that, then it wouldn't be good even lower than that. Though haitana de ka'asa b'tzadin, v'kashari b'tzidei tzadin. So what's the only explanation? Why it would be okay? Why wouldn't it be okay? Lemata miyutfachim, because if you tied it, then you're using the tree, because it's sedade ha'ilon, using the basket which is attached to the tree. But if you tie if the basket is hanging off the thing that's attached to the tree, it's tzidei tzadim. So you see that there's a difference between tzadim and tzidei tzadim, and that's why they use that lashon. Rav has to explain why they use such an interesting lashon. If you say there's a difference, then there's a reason, right? This kasha is sweet, very sweet. You like this kasha? Got it? Otherwise, just say tie. You tie the basket to the tree. No, so you see that there's another topic that's being intertwined into this brighter. It's not only the topic about Rishut Harabim, Rishut Yachid. There's a problem of being mishtamish be'ilon, and that's why he had to be careful. The Tana that wrote the brighter to write na'atz that he wedged it in. Omerav Papa comes to the rescue. Hocho b'kalkola dechuko askinon. We're talking about a very narrow basket. And the basket, you have to stick your hand in, and it's very hard to get your hand in. Rashi says, and therefore, the bahadi the shokal the erev kamanad the ilon kamshtamish be ilon gufay. In order for you to get your food out, you're gonna have to stick your hand in, and you're gonna have to really push your hand in strong, like it's very tight. So when you do that with all that force to get in, you're gonna be shaking the tree. Shaking the tree, that's us. That's being mishtamish in the ilon itself. Now, that's a halacha. What's the pshat in that halacha? Because it shakes. I'm not using that part. So the answer is because you're using the weight of the tree. How do I know? What's indicative of that? What shows me that? Look, you see it's all shaking. So you're really using the tree. I think so. I think that's the pshat. But that's the halacha. Okay, that's the halacha. You're not allowed to shake a tree. That's called being mishtamish b'ilam. Okay, so that was the way he got out for Rava. But the Gemara says, even though he got out of it, the halacha follows the way Abaye said, Hilchasa, tzedodin asturin, tzidei tzedodin mutarin. Omer Avashi, Tzadim, there are problems. Tzidei tzadim are fine. Omer Avashi hashta amr tzadin asurin. Haydaga the middle loy linchi inish adikla the havalut tzadin. If a person has a ladder, and they used to climb up the ladder to these little huts that they made on these big stilts that were next to a tree, and it was like a guard booth. It was built on stilts, and they used to sit there. How do you get up with a ladder? So be careful, says Rav Ashi now. Don't put the top of the ladder on the tree, because now you're going to be using the ladder which is attached to the tree. Place it on the pegs that are sticking out of the tree, and then it'll be tzidei tzedadim, and it'll be mutar. Right? Now, by the way, you can't, you have to be careful now. Now, so when you go up the ladder, you're using the ladder is attached, is the tzidei stem of the tree, because it's 2 steps off. But you also have to be careful not to put the ladder on Shabbos, because then you're using the pegs for yourself, for your ladder, and that is tzedodim. So this has to be put up before Shabbat. And then when you go on Shabbat, which part did you use? The ladder, not the peg that was out of the tree. So it's 2 steps removed, and then you're fine. So he says, v'chisolik, and when you go up, be careful not to put your foot on the pegs, because then you're using the tzidei oilan, ela litkan litnach hakonin. Make sure you put it on the rungs of the ladder, which are tzidei tzidod. I think the halacha is also with the same thing, saying, I don't want to say anything halacha lemaisa here, but with a hammock. This is the sugya of hammock. Okay? If you have a hammock, and you tie the hammock to the tree, and you go on the hammock is coming off the tree, it's tzedadim, it's osur. Now you go to your hammock on Shabbat, because you're being mishtamish b'ilam. But if you have these metal things that come out of the hammock with those round, holes or something, that the ropes of the hammock go into that, it's tzidei tzedad, you can use the hammock on Shabbos. Pretty sure that's halacha. Yeah, that's very good shmak. So teheilige Mishnah weiter. Michael, good kasha from you now. Yeah? You're getting tired, no? No? Mahatirin. Eliyahu Hanavi. Chame b'mitzvah Shabbos. Warm also. Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu, I know.
I thought you were talking about Eliyahu Navi, the delivery person. I was confused. I'm sorry.
He's going to deliver better than pizza. He's going to deliver Mashiach himself. You're allowed to untie the bundles of hay in front of the animal so that it can eat it. It does not like eating bundled up hay. You think that we're picky? The animals are also. Because when it gets really hot and humid and sweaty, because it's bundled up, it loses its smell, its fresh smell of the hay. He gets repulsed. Rashi says, cuts of him. He's not interested. So you untie it. You can do that for the animal on Shabbos. Why shouldn't I be able to do that? We're not talking about untying a kesher shekayama, because that would be asur v'deraisa. So we're talking about whatever, undoing something that you're allowed to undo. So why not? We'll see. Why does it have to say this? Umifasvisin, you're allowed to spread after you untie them. Esa kipin, the kipin. Now, I should have said what I said before on the second part, meaning why do they have to be separated? Even if you untie them, but if they're still together, it'll still be hot. So untying makes it easy. Oh, Eliyahu Hanavi.
Eliyahu Tishvit. We need some kedusha.
Eliyahu Hagiladi Yivaldik. So now, you're allowed to, we just started a Mishnah, so you're allowed to untie the bundles for the animal to eat, and you're also allowed to spread them across so that they air out and they smell good, so the animal will not be repulsed and eat them. Okay, why should I think there's a problem? We'll see in a second. Avoloyes hazirin, but not the zirin. What do you mean, what's not the zirin? What are zirin? The Gemara will explain. And we don't understand this Mishnah at all, because why would I have a problem? Why shouldn't I have? We'll see. Ein miraskin. You may not cut up. You can't cut up. The shachas is a type of grain that, while it's still a grass, in Bava Basra we call it aspasta. It's basically animal fodder. It grows very, very fast. In 30 days, and it's less than a third the ripe of the real tvuah, and it's just great stuff for the animals. So ein miraskin, you're not allowed to cut that, and the loyes charuvin, and not the boxer. Boxer charuvin is the carobs. In front of an animal, are we talking about dried carobs or soft carobs? We'll see in the Gemara. You're not allowed to cut them in front of a large animal. A large animal is like, cattle, horses, donkeys, mules, or small animals like sheep and goats. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you could do it for the daka, for the charuvim, because his teeth are too small to chew it up. Okay? Basically, the Tanakh is saying that since these two items are able to be eaten without cutting them up, and cutting them just makes it more nicer, so you can't do it. Now, what's the problem? We'll see. But Rabbi Yehuda says, whatever problem you have, you can't create that. You don't have that problem for a small animal. For charuvin, it's just way too hard to eat. Okay, so we'll see.
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai ate it for 13 years.
We're going to see soon. Because first of all, it could be that he cut it up. Second of all, it could be that the Gemara is going to say it's dry and he ate fresh ones. Third of all, they were from Nistim, so it made it. And fourth of all, he wasn't a sheep. There's a lot of differences, but we're going to see Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay. Amar Avuna hein pekin hein kipin. Pekin trei kipin plasa. Pekin and kipin in the Mishnah are the same thing. Pekin means it has two ties around it, and kipin means it has three ties around it. Okay. So, okay, and zirin that we were so particular about and said no. What are they? They are the arzi. They are moist branches of the cedar tree. Now, the moist branches of the cedar tree are normally used for firewood, so they're muktzah, and they're not food. Now, he decided that since they're still moist, I can feed them to my animals. Okay? So the Mishnah is not allowing you to do all these acts. We'll soon see exactly which part of the Mishnah you're not allowed to do with the Anfei Erez. Only with the animal fodder that was tied with either two ties or three ties, but not the cedar branches. Why not? This is the way you read the Mishnah according to Rav Huna. V'hochi ka'amar. This is the way you read it. This is like the Rashi. The Gemara is like being the Rashi for the Mishnah. Matirim pekiyei amir. This is the way you read it. You're allowed to untie bundles of straw, hay, which are tied on the two ends, lifnei behema, umifasvisin, and you're allowed to even spread them apart. Behu adin likipin, and the same thing would be if it has a third tie in the middle. Even though there's a lot of tircha and exertion, avaloyes has zirin, but not the moist zirin, loy lefasves v'loy lahatin, nothing. The other two are, you can do everything. You can do both these acts, untie and spread. This one, you can't do anything. Now, why? Why you differentiate? So, Rav Chizda, my time at Rav Huna, kosavar, lemitach be'uch l'tochinon, l'shavi uch loy mashvinon. You're allowed to exert a lot of effort in a ready-made food. Okay? But to make food out of something, you're being moiled. It's the isser of hoylada. You're not allowed to make food. Molid. Molid. So therefore, bundles of straw, which are pekin and kipin, doesn't matter how much you have to work, even if there's three ties around them, you're allowed to untie them, you're allowed to spread them out, because it's already oichel. But Anfei Erez, they're not oichel. So you're not allowed to spread them apart in front of the animal because you're creating an oichel. This is really not oichel, it's really firewood, right? Okay, got it? So you're allowed to be matriach, even though it's tircha, once it's oichlin. Because that's the way. Yehuda Amar, no. He says almost like the opposite. He says, Heinen Pki and Heinen Zirun. Actually, the first case and the last case are the same item, and the only difference is Pki and Trei is used in Tloso. 2 ties or 3 ties. In the middle case, the Mishnah Kippin, okay, that was, when it said Umefasis as a Kippin, that is the Arzi, that is the one that's cedar tree. So how do you read the Mishnah now? Ba'achi Kamar, different way of reading it. Matirim Kiye Omer, Lifnei Behemo. You're allowed to untie bundles that are tied by 2 in front of an animal. Avol paspusi loy. Okay? You don't say umifasis in that keeping goes back on the pekin. Okay? No. Pispus, which means spreading it out, you're not allowed to do. Why? Why can't I do it? I already untied it. Why can't I spread them out? So I'll explain. The Gemara will explain in a second. The keepin, but the middle case, paspusi nami mifaspesino. The middle case was the most lenient in the Mishnah. If you take a look, it says umifasis in esakipin. Avaloyazin, don't do pispus. Don't spread them out. The zirin. What could you do to the zirin? The fast face. You can't do elo lahate, but you could untie, which means the first and last case, you cannot spread out. You can only untie for the animal. But the middle case, which wasn't even food yet, that one you could be mefasvis too. What's pshat? Amar Rava, my time with Rav Yehuda, kastava shave uchla mashvina. He says the opposite. To make something ready to be eaten because of the tsar of the behema, you could do it. The Chacham allowed you to do that. Even though you're being moilid, they didn't have that problem of hoilid because of tsar behema. So, therefore, you're allowed to untie. The animal can't eat it if it's tied. Okay? But once it's untied, he can eat them. Now, why do you want to spread them out? You want to make it more geschmack. You want to make it more delicious. It's a little bit nauseating for this and that. Okay, but it's not so bad. Even though Rashi said before, kotzavahim, sounded like he won't eat them at all. But no, he'll eat them. But it's just you want to make it the most pleasurable. No, you're being matriach. Tircha, they had a problem. They didn't have a problem making the food because the animal has to eat. Okay, but now he can eat, so stop right there. You won't have the best meal of his life. Okay? But mitrach b'uchel itachina. You can't be tereach. Then, what about the Amfei Eitz Erez? The Amfei Eitz Erez, if you don't spread them out, then they're not food at all. Okay? One second. I'm not sure why. Rashi just says, without spreading out the moist cedar tree ones, it's not food at all. I'm not sure why. But that's the fact. So therefore, that's the machlekes. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, we're asking us shachatz v'loi, ve'esacharuv l'fnei behema, bein dako, bein gaso. What's the reason? The reason is the same thing as the beginning of the Mishnah. Because you're being matriach with food. Unnecessary tircha. Cutting up things. Okay? My love, charuv v'dumi d'shachas. So, or you're being mashvi oichel, according to how you learn. However you learn the ratio, that's how you learn the sefer. So Gemara says, why you pick these two things, charuvin and shachas? That means that they're both the same type of thing. That means whatever one status is, the other one's status is in the same state. So the Gemara says, charuvin should be like shachas. Ma shachas derkichi, b'derech klal, shachas is soft. Av charuvin derkichi. Now, charuvin that are soft are able to be fed to an animal without cutting them up. Cutting them up is just a tainug. And still the Mishnah says what? You're not allowed to do it. So you see clearly, Amaloi tachina ba'uchla, utiyufta d'Ravuna. So So you see that you're not allowed to be matriach in oichel. Rav Huna said that the problem in the beginning of the Mishnah was to make oichel, to be moilid oichel. But if something is already oichel, you're allowed to be matriach and make it better and better. Rav Yehuda didn't hold like that. Rav Yehuda said you have to stop. No tircha. Here we see in the end that you're not allowed to be matriach to make it better. Because the stuff is soft already, so it's oichel, they can eat it. But you want to make it better, and it says don't do it. So you see that you're not allowed to do that. Rav Huna answers, loy. Shachas do me the charuvin. It's just the opposite. The shachas is a case where it's doimet to normal carobs. Machruv da kushi. B'derech klal. They are hard because b'derech klal people ate them after they didn't get to eat them right off the tree. By the time they got to the market, like I don't know if we in America for sure, ever saw a fresh carob I never saw in my life. Just those things that get on Tu B'Shvat, you throw at each other, the kids, right? So you see, because it dries up right fast. I heard that they're delicious, actually, fresh.
Oh, fresh.
That's what I heard. So, but b'derech klal, they get dry fast. So the shachas here is also talking about when they're dry. So to the shachas is hard. It's not really to eat at all. And therefore the risa cutting them makes it edible. Edible, mamish. From unedible to edible. And therefore it's aser.
I mean, all the words that I use in Shabbat, I hear edible, shach, alaf shach, I had to protect alaf shach versus like 500 Chabadnik and fight for him. And alaf shach is Chodesh.
Sagt the Gemara, how do you find the case that shachas is so hard that you can't even give it to a large horse or a cattle without cutting it? Be'ilei zutri. We're talking about young donkeys. And young donkeys, even normal shachas is hard for them. So you have to cut it up for them. And that's the case that we're talking about. Toshima. Let's now bring another kasha on Rav Huna. Rav Huna said that you're allowed to be matriach be'uchla. You're just not allowed to be moilid uchla. You're allowed to exert effort with food, but you can't create new food. Frek the Gemara kasha. Rabbi Yehuda matir becharuvin lidaka. Rabbi Yehuda says, the carobs you can give a small sheep or a goat, because their teeth can't deal with it unless you cut it up. Lidaka in the gasaloi. So Rabbi Yehuda is being matir for a taka, but not for a gasa. If the Tanakam holds like Rav Yehuda's pshat in the Mishnah before, that you're not allowed to exert effort in food, but you're allowed to create food if it's not food because of the tsar of the behema. So therefore, the Mishnah again, you have to just calculate this. And the Mishnah of Shachas Acharuvin were talking about soft things. And he's telling you you're not allowed to cut them up because you're making it even better. It's already edible. Then Hainu dekam Rabbi Yehuda Hacharuvin l'dakanami shvuya uchlahu. That's why Rabbi Yehuda says, hey, I'm not going to be matriach, but for the sheep and the goats, their teeth can't make it. So when I cut it, I'm not making it better. I'm not being matriach be'uchla. Ani mashve uchla. I'm creating oichel. It's not oichel now for the sheep and the goats. But if you say, like Rav Huna, that it's talking about hard, like the Gemara tried to explain before, and the reason why you're not allowed to cut them up, you're not allowed to create a new food, but you're allowed to exert effort. And therefore, he said, you're not allowed to do it because you're not just exerting effort, but you're creating food. So Rabbi Yehuda matir b'charuvin l'daka. So why would Rabbi Yehuda be matir b'charuvin for a small animal? Kolshke in the gasa. So what's he saying? He's saying you're not allowed to create food from hard boxer, hard carobs. So why would Rabbi Yehuda say it's okay for a small animal? What would Rabbi Yehuda be saying? Don't tell me he's saying, oh, the teeth are not going to make it, so you're making food, because that's exactly the problem, according to Rafuna. You're not allowed to make food. So it must be that Rabbi Yehuda is saying, nah, it's food. Even the little animals could deal with it. It's just a tircha. And a tircha you could do. Oh, really? So why only for a baby? Why not a baby, a gedaka, a small animal. He says, kolshki and legasa. Which means if you're telling me that it's not considered like you're making it into food for the little animals, and it's just, getting busy with the food, so for sure it's not making new food for the large animal, and it's just being matriach be'oichlin. So why would he only be matir for the baby, for the little animals? Says the Gemara, Misav dako mamosh. My dako gasto. We don't mean a small animal. We mean a large animal. Why we call it as daka? The daka b'uchla. She chews very much with her mouth. And therefore, what he's saying is, Yehuda, that you're allowed to cut it for a gasa, because the gasa is able to eat it without risuk. It's exactly the opposite. You have to read Yehuda the opposite way. Yehuda is saying you're allowed to cut up only for a gasa. He called it daka, but he was talking about a gasa. I guess that was a normal thing to do, because he chews. And for him, he's able to eat it without you cutting it. So it's already an oichel for the large one. What are you doing? You're enhancing it. You're exerting more effort and tircha. That's fine. But for the little one, you can't. He's moide. Because that one, you're being moide in oichel. Says the Gemara, Hamidik Tani Reisha Ben Daku Ben Gas and Mechlad Rabbi Yehuda Daka Mamish Kama Kasha. If the Reisha didn't say call little ones Daka, large ones Gasta, so then maybe you could say that when Rabbi Yehuda said the word Daka, he meant a Gasta that's Daka, that's Madekes, that's Loeset. But if he's going on the words of Tanakama, the Tanakama said Gasta and Daka. And when he said daka, he meant a little one. So when Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you could cut them for little ones, he means little. You can't say it means the big one. That's a good kasha. Now, by the way, when you see kasha, many Go'inim always say, and Rishonim, it's not checkmate. It just means that at that point the Gemara said, I'll get back to you on this one, but this is a teretz. They weren't so bothered by it. Now, the Ran they bring down says a teretz for Rabbi. I don't know what the teretz is, but let's go right. Toshima. Let's bring a right here. Mechatchin esadlun if they are behema b'stanavel if they are club. Did the air conditioning go down from 75 or something?
Just me, I brought all the heat.
I'm hot. Is it still 75 on top? Because I turned to 70. Does it work? Does it go down?
It's at 71 right now.
Even the top?
Yeah.
Oh wow. So it's just me, I guess.
It's the fire, the heat, chadoraita.
Amen. Amen.
האש שלי תוקד עד ביאת המשיח.
חי אדוננו מלמד רבנו. אנחנו נמשיך לעולם ועד.
יחי כולם, יחי כל עם ישראל.
עם ישראל חי.
כל עמך ישראל צדיקים.
אמן. יאמר כולם צדיקים, דאוילם ישועות.
רבנו אומר, תורה רש פ"ב, ללמד כף זכות על כל אדם. אפילו רשע גמור, איך יכול להיות שלא עשה מעשה טוב מימיו. וגם פושעים, מכנים פושעי ישראל, עדיין זה מישראל. זה לא פושע, זה פושעי ישראל. מלאים מצוות כרימון.
Why? Tell me, you're allowed to cut a gourd for a behemoth on Shabbat?
המבור והמארץ, יצא stuff like that.
You're not allowed. You're allowed to cut gourds up in front of an animal?
מה זה גורץ? לחתוך בהמה אחרת מול בהמה.
No, like a pumpkin or like a big
If she's
squash.
gonna get scared from that,
No, not scared, not scared. No. I mean, it doesn't mean in front like to scare her. It means so that they can eat it. That's what it means.
So the animal can eat it?
Yeah,
I think it's okay, I don't know.
it's okay. So, normally, who eats this? The dluin, the people eat it. So it says, Mechatchin es adluin lefnei behema, ve'es hanevela lefnei haklav. Nevela is not muktzah because it's normally given to dogs. So it's dog food. Deluin, my love, deluin do mit the nevela. Ma nevela dirkicha, av deluin dirkichi. There's similar cases. So if the nevela is soft, right? Meat is soft. So this is also soft squash. They're very ripe and soft. So you don't have to do anything. And it still says, you let it cut them. Alma tachinam be'uchlo utiyusu de Rav Yehuda. They could eat them if you don't cut it up. But you're trying to make it more palatable, little pieces for the animal. He doesn't have to go put his mouth on the whole thing. So you see that you're allowed to be matriach with oichlin. Omelach Rav Yehuda loy. Nevelu du mit the dluin, it's the opposite. Ma dluin de ashuni af nevelu de ashuna. Normally dluin are hard. So the nevela that we're talking about is not the normal type of nevela, but a hardened piece of meat. So here, you cannot, they're not food at all. You have to be moilid da'eichel, and that's okay according to Rav Yehuda. Because it's tzar for the behema. Vehechi mishkachas lo. How do you have beef jerky? What is this? How do you have a piece of nevela? It just died. Whatever, I don't know, it didn't die a few days ago, they didn't have refrigeration, so it would be spoiled. So it died. So how could the meat get so hard? That you could, comparing it to so the answer is bivasa pili. Elephant meat is very hard. Inami biguyosa zutri. We're talking about little puppies, and for them, they can't eat even a soft piece of meat. A soft piece of meat, a large piece, is just too hard for them to eat. You have to cut it into little pieces. So, okay, Toshima. The Toni Rav Chanon minardo mifarchinon. You're allowed to crumble up teven ve'aspasta, hay and this aspasta grass, ume'orvin, and you can mix them together, so that the animal will end up eating the teven because the shachas is in there. Now, how are you allowed to crumble them up? They're already edible beforehand. So you're being matriach. Alma tachina be'uchlo, it's a kasha on Rav Yehuda. So the Gemara answers, teven betivna sarya, aspasta be'ili zutri. The heter, to crumble up the teven, is talking about a little bit of rotten teven. So you can't really eat it unless you crumble it up. And the aspasta is talking about small young donkeys that can't eat it until you crumble it up. So you're being moiled it, and according to Yehuda, that will be the teretz, that's why it's mutter. You're not allowed to stuff the throat of a camel with a lot of food. Okay, that's what they used. That's what they did before they went out on long trips in the desert. They would force feed them a huge amount, and that would last for several days. So you're not allowed to do such a thing because that's extra exertion. The loy darsin.
Is it only general or is it only Shabbat?
On Shabbat. Now you're going to ask, it's hachana for the next day. Forget about tircha, right? I'm not so sure because he's getting filled with it now. I'm saying might help him tomorrow also. Okay, so on Shabbat, velo darsin, and darsin is like a lower level, like less stuff, less stuffing. Darsin is you stuff him with food that he needs for one day. The other one's for like 2-3 days. So you can't even do the smaller one. Aval mal'itin. Mal'itin is also force feed, but there's we'll see the level in the Gemara. We'll explain what that level is. So that you could do. So there's first two steps you can't do. The third one you could do. The ein ma'amirin es golim. We'll see what ma'amirin means in the Gemara. By force. Aval mal'itin. But the calves you could be malit. Umehalkitin l'tarnagoylin, and you're allowed to be mahalkate, which is the same thing as malitin, which we'll see what it is in the Gemara. We said for the gemalim and the agolim, it's the same lashon for the tarnagoylim. Okay, so malitin is mutter for all three. Malitin for the gemalim, for the agolim, and the halkatin, which is the same thing for the tarnagoylim. And you're allowed to put water into their bran. But you can't mix it around, because that will be kneading on Shabbos. That's one of the malachas. Okay, but pouring the water into it is very important. Seems like from the Mishnah, it's not an isser of lisha, even though right when you pour it in, a lot of the stuff right it comes together. It's not. You're not allowed to place water in front of the bees or the doves in the dove coat, right? Because they can go and eat in the field. Okay? And they don't need your food. But you could place water in front of the geese and the chickens, the roosters. These are doves from Hardesios. Some say it's hurdus. You could do that. Why? Because they need food from the home. They don't suffice with fruit from the field, and therefore, since their mezainis is on you, therefore you're allowed to feed them. So any animal, like a bee or a regular dove, not the fancy dove of Hardesius, that could just get his own food from the field, you have to let him get it from the field. It says the Gemara, "My ein oifsim." What does it mean? You're not allowed to force feed. I want to view the ein oifsim le'ebus b'steich me'el. You're not allowed to make a trough inside its stomach. Which means that's why the lashon is oivsim, because in a trough, so it's like it becomes a verb. You can't trough an animal, which means you're going to make his stomach the size of a trough that has so much food in it for several days. Says the Gemara, how is it possible that you could force feed a camel to have so much food in it that his stomach becomes as large as a trough? Someone says, it's possible. I saw this Arab merchant, the Ochla Koira. He fed his camel a kur of tevin, ve'at'ina koira, and then he put another kur on top of him to serve as food for the way, besides all the other packages that he put on. So you see that you can give a huge amount, a massive amount of food to the camel. Now, how much is that? A kur is 30 sa. A sa is 144 eggs. 144 eggs times 30 is 3,000. 40 times 30 is 1,200. That's 4,200. And 4 times 30 is 120. 4,320. 4,320 eggs in a camel. You're able to do it. He saw it. Ein ma'amirin. But you're not allowed to ma'amir the agolim, but you can be malit them. So what are these words? Ma'amirin and mal'itin. Ezuhi hamro, ezuhi halota, that's mutter. Hamro is asur, Halata is mutar. Amar Rabbi Yehuda hamra'a lemakom she'eino yachol lachzir. Which means you stick in the food to a place where he can never vomit it anymore. He can't, he can vomit, but he can't bring it up anymore because it's already past the throat. Stick it down his throat. Halata lemakom she'eino yachol lachzir. Halata means to a place where he could still get rid of it. Okay? So that much you're allowed to do. Nothing to do with that. Both of them are past the throat. But Hamra is using a spoon. Halata b'yad. Why? Because if you do it with a keli, it becomes too difficult. Not sure exactly why, but that's the way it is. If you do it with your hand, it's easier. So now, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it comes out that the difference is you're not allowed to put it further than its throat, where it can't bring it back up. And according to Rav Chizda, you could, as long as you don't use a keli. Correct the Gemara on Rav Yehuda, Masir Rav Yosef. The Brisa says you're allowed to be mehalkit, a tarnagol, and you're not allowed to be malkit. What's malkit? So it sounds like mehalkit is not as bad as malkit, because it says mehalkit you can't do. Sorry, you could do. Sorry. Malkit you could do, and you don't have to, for sure you don't have to even tell me that malkit you could do. Malkit is less than mehalkit. Ve'ein malkitin liyoyin shevach liyoyin aliyah. But even the less one you can't do for the dove in the dove coat and for the attic doves. Ve'ein tzarech lo mishay mehalkitin. And if you can't do the less one, for sure you can't do the worst one. So now what are these? My mehalkitin and my malkitin. Ile mehalkitin the safile. Be a dime malkitin the shadule kamayu. If you tell me mehalkitin is worse because it's you stuffing it with into their mouths with your hands, and malkitin means you put it in front of them. So that means they're not allowed to even be malkit, which means to put it down in front of the yoyne shevach and the yoyne aliyah. How could that be? Says the Gemara. Of course, you're allowed to feed them elalav because their mezoinus is on you. So elalav mehalkatin l'makam she'eni yichayil l'hachzer u'malkitin l'makam she'yichayil l'hachzer. So it must be that when it says that you're allowed to be mehalkit the tarnagol, it means you're allowed to put it down the throat past where it could bring it back up, and malkitin you for sure could do l'makam she'yichayil l'hachzer. But for the yoyne shoivach, you can't even do this to feed them in their mouth at all, even if it's not further than that spot on their throat. So now, so why are you allowed to do that? M'chlal d'hamra b'kli, what do you have to Rav Yehuda? So if you're not even allowed to do it's not really so much about the doves. It's more, the kasha is more about the chickens. The chickens, it says that you're allowed to put it down in their mouth. You're allowed to put it into their mouth. Even mokim she'eini yichayil l'achzir. That's what it says about the chickens. Okay? Now, if you're allowed to do that down the chicken's mouth, you're past where it machzir. So then why are you not allowed to do that for the animals in the Mishnah? Must be you could also. So what is the Mishnah being answering? What is the Mishnah saying is asur? A keli. Something else, nothing to do with how far you, because you see in this price that you're allowed to do that. So it's a tiyuf to the Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda, lo'ilu mehalkatin d'safili. Be a dime. Umakitin d'shad d'kamai. Really, it's the way you thought at the beginning. You're not allowed to put it past. But it never said that you're allowed to. It said you're allowed to put it into its mouth. And so if you're going to ask me, so why are you not allowed to do that in front of the doves? So the Gemara says because hani mizaynoisin alecha, the hani aim mizaynoisin alecha, because you don't need to feed them. Kedetanya noisin mizaynois ifnei kelev, noisin mizaynois ifnei chazir. You're allowed to put food in front of a dog, but not in front of a chazir. And the reason is because dogs in those days were very maltreated. Nobody was interested in them. Therefore, they were always starving. And because they were always starving, they needed people's food. So therefore, you have to be a rachem of kol masav. You have to feed them. But the chazerim, umay hefesh b'zel zeh, zeh mizay noisav alecha, v'zeh ein mizay noisav alecha. Right? Because you're not allowed to bring up a chazir. Chacham said, gave a klala for anybody who raises these chazerim. So therefore, you're not mechuyev to feed it because you're not allowed to even bring it up. But a dog you could bring up as long as it's not a bad dog, and if it's tied with a leash, people won't be scared of it. So therefore, you see that there are things that are also to place mizaynis in front of it, and that would include the yoynei shoivach and the yoynei aliyah. Amar Rashi masis nami deka. Our mission is meduyik like this also, because it says ein nois nimayim lifnei dvorim v'lifnei yoynim shebeshoivach avol nois lifnei avazim lifnei kargoyim lifnei yoynim adoisis. My time. The difference between these two categories in the Mishnah is precisely that. Because bees and regular doves don't need you. And according to you, so I'd say water dafka. If the reason is because the mezainis, the feeding them is not your responsibility, so you shouldn't be able to put even real food in front of the bees and the shayfchim. But it sounds like you're allowed to. So it must be that water is different. Because water is always found in the swamp. But chitim and tza'orim is not always found, that you could put in front of them. Eliyahu. This is Agadata Gemara now. This Gemara is now Agadata. It's going to be like, yeah. Yeah, as I tell you. Exactly. Idea Tzadik Din Dalim. Idea Tzadik Din Dalim. Idea HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Chelev Shemizaynoisav Mu'otin. Fikach Shoyach Ilosem Me'av Shleshi Yom. Kadosh Baruch Hu is the tzaddik. He knows the justice of the paupers. So he knows that the kelev will have food in its intestines. It will take 3 days to digest. If a dog eats food like basar of a mace, a dead person. So, and how long did it have to be in his stomach before the dog died, so that the basar remains tummy? Which means, in the kelev, it takes 3 days. So if a dog ate a piece of a kazayas of a mace, right? As long as the dog is alive, it's called tuma belua. It's a rule in Taharot. Tuma that's swallowed is not metame. So even if you go over the dog, you make like an oil on the dog, right? There's no tuma. But once a dog dies,
Dog dies or dog dies?
you came in the middle of a sentence. You can't ask. But dog dies. Dog dies. If a dog dies with basar met shel adam, basar adam met בתוך מאב של כלב.
למה זה?
הוא אכל את זה.
הוא אכל את הבן אדם?
כן. לא, הוא כבר מת הבן אדם. עכשיו, right?
הכלב אכל את הבן אדם והכלב מת.
כן. So how many days after he eats it could you say it's already nitakel? It's already digested. So it takes 3 days for a dog. And by birds and dogim, it's kedei shetipa la'ur. V'sistaref. As fast as you take food, throw it into fire, and it burns. That's how fast it digests. So the Gemara is saying that for the first 3 days, let's say a dog died after 1 day of eating, or 2 days of eating, or 2.5 days of eating basur meis. So now it's tum in there. It's not fully digested. That's why it's derech eretz to throw a piece of meat to a dog, even if the dog it doesn't belong to anybody. Okay? Everybody's mechuyev to feed him. And that's why you're allowed to feed him even on Shabbos, because mizoynoisav olecha. V'kama amar Rav Mari mishach udnei v'chutra basri. A little bit. Measure his ear, and then give him a little bang afterwards, so he doesn't keep coming back. Okay? Hani mi lebedavra. Avol b'masala the asala misrach. Because if you're in the field, the dog doesn't know where you live, doesn't know how to come back to you. So fine, it's a one-time thing. But if it's in your city, you're going to end up losing a lot because the dog is always going to keep coming back to you. You're going to have to keep giving him. Amar Papa, less the aina mikalba. There is no less the aina mikalba. There's no poorer animal than a dog. But less the osim chazir. And there's no wealthier animal than a chazir, because he can eat anything, and they give him a lot to eat. Okay. Let's just go drop weiter, everybody say. So now, by the way, I'll tell you a nice story. Chavetz Chaim. He once wanted to say that Rabbi Sol Salanter says that why is Parshas Shemini next to Parshas Tazria Mitzayra? Because it wants to let you know that just like Shemini, everybody's careful. Chavetz Chaim said, which Avera does everybody keep? Like they don't do.
Which Avera nobody does?
Guy could drive on Shabbat, but he won't eat pork. Yeah. Pork, that's the thing. Yeah, right? Does every Avera pork? Which Avera does nobody keep? Everybody transgresses, even the best people. The Gemara says, Kulam bevak lashon hara. Lashon hara. What's lashon hara represented? The Gemara says if a person talks lashon hara, la kelev tashtichunoto, lo tisa shem hashav, la kelev tashtichunoto. Dogs always are the mashal for lashon hara. Right? So the Chavetz Chaim said, look at this Gemara. Less the anya mikabel. There's no poorer mitzvah than the dog one. Lashon hara. The less the os is no richer mitzvah than chazira. Everybody keeps that one. Chazir. That's why Hashem puts Shmini next to Tazria Mitzayra, says Rabbi Sol Salanter. To teach you that, the richest one, the most important one, pork. Because Shmini is all the animals you're not allowed to eat. Don't eat this. Oh yeah, for sure. Not religious, but I wouldn't do that. The next pash is Tazria. Right next to it is just as important. The poor one, the one of Lashon Hara, Tazria Mitzayra. So he wanted to write this down and sign it with all the Gedolei Hador to strengthen Lashon Hara. So Reb Chaim Oitzer Grodzinski told him, Rebbe, if you do this, people are not going to strengthen Lashon Hara. They'll just be weaker in Chazer. Because if you're going to you make comparatives between the two, they say, oh really? Then I might as well try some Chazer, because I speak a lot of Lashon Hara. It's going to be the other way around. Whoa. Yeah. No, Shabbos is going away. You ready? This guy is Matzei Shabbat. So now the Gemara says, Tanya Kavasa de Rav Yehuda, Ezohi Hamra ve'ezohi haloto. What is Hamra'ah and what is Halata? We're going to be finished in about a minute or two. that's osir, and what is halata? So we said already, there's a machlokes what it is, and we're going to see now. So look at this this brighter like Rav Yehuda, hamro marbitzo. He sits the behemoth down, upokes et piyah, and he widens his mouth with strength, and then he places pokes. You put like a, I don't know what they call them in English, chika. It's like a thing inside the mouth that it can't close its jaws. Uma'achila kashinin. You feed it these kashinin, and right, it's a certain type of bean that was soaked in water. And when it's sitting, you're able to really get it deep down. Umayim bevastachas, and with water, together with water, because they'll make it go all the way down. And it won't be able to bring it back up. Halata ma'achila me'umad while it's standing. When it's standing, you can't really force it so down. Umashka me'umad. And you make a drink when it's standing. And you don't open its mouth so strong. When you give them separately. So you see clearly that the difference between amro and halata is, do you put it down further than past where it can bring it back up or not? Abaye said, I said this in front of Mar. Who's Mar? Usually means Rabbu. Here we're going to see it means Rav Yosef. Masnisin mani. Who is our Mishnah like that says you let to place water inside the bran and there's no ister of, this is a brand new sugi of Elisha. But that's the shayah of the Gemara, that you let to put water in and there's no ister of Elisha. We'll see Be'ezrat Hashem tomorrow. Eliyahu Hanavi.